I grew up in Minnesota, and Minnesota is the coldest United State in America. So they say the continental 48. So the main continent, there's 48 states, and then there's Canada, and then north of Canada is Alaska, and then out in the Pacific Ocean is Hawaii, and that makes up the 50 states of the United States. And we're in the very center of the United States, and very north, we border on Canada. So our weather can be very cold. So in the winter, it can get minus 40 degrees Celsius. And the lakes in Minnesota, there's many lakes. So there's 10,000 lakes, they say, but there's actually more. And all the lakes freeze in the winter. They get so cold that you can walk on the lakes. And then it can get, in the middle of winter, it can get so cold for so long that you can drive a car on the frozen lake. Have you guys ever heard of someone driving a car on a lake before? No. And so it gets very cold, but there's a lot of winter activity. So we have snowmobiles. So they're like cars with these big tracks, and you ride over the snow on them. We cross country ski. We downhill ski. We play ice hockey. So we have a lot of winter sports. So even though it's cold a lot, people get outside a lot. And I'm a member of the Polar Bear Club. So the Polar Bear Club is when you cut a hole out of the frozen ice in the lake and you jump into the water and you go all the way underwater and then you come out. It's very cold, but there's only a few people that like to do that. So Minnesota is very beautiful. There's a lot of trees, a lot of lakes. There is what we call 4 seasons. Emma, do you know what 4 seasons are?
Yes, autumn, winter, fall, and I don't know the one.
So it's summer, fall, winter, and spring. Do you have those seasons in your home? What is it? Is it hot or cold where you live?
It's cold.
Cold? How cold? Oh, I couldn't quite hear you.
It's a little bit.
A little bit cold? Okay. So Minnesota is it was primarily immigrated by Germans and Scandinavians, Swedes and Norwegians. And so most of Minnesota is white skin like myself. And they're very, what they would call conservative. They don't have a lot of emotion. So Minnesotans are more reserved. And let me say, if you guys have a question at any time, just raise your hand and let me know. But so in Minnesota, people are very kind and very hardworking. So I lived out in the farming community. I was a pastor, and out in the farms, they have very large farms, right? There's some of them are 2,000 acres or more, and I'm not sure what you would use for a measurement, but you would use very large machines that are, 20 meters wide, and you would drive them up and down the fields like a whole 1.5 kilometers one way and come back. And it takes a long time to plant seed with machines, and it takes a long time to harvest and bring the crops up. And so Minnesota has some of the best soil for farming in the whole world. So there's a lot of corn produced and soybeans and beets, sugar beets, and other agriculture. And so Minnesotans are very much, they were farmers for many, many years. And now there's more people that live in the city. But when I lived out in the farm, out in the farming community, people were very helpful. So if your car breaks down in the side of the road, someone will stop and help you, or if at one time there was a farmer, he was only 48 years old and he passed away suddenly, and he had a wife and 3 children. And he had all the crops were still in the field. And so many of the other farmers, about 15 of them, they decided to not farm on their own property, and they brought all their equipment over and they helped bring the crop in so that the wife and the children would have money to live on after the passing of her husband and their father. And so Minnesotans tend to be very hardworking. They care and they serve and help each other a lot. And primarily white. So when I was growing up in the 1970s, 50 years ago, almost every person I knew in Minnesota was white. But starting in the late 1970s, there began to be a large number of immigrants coming to Minnesota. The first ones that I remember were the Hmong. And so the Hmong came in the 70s as refugees and began to live in the city. And that was kind of the first time I remember refugees being here. Well, today, Minneapolis and St. Paul, so St. Paul is the capital city, and then Minneapolis is right next to it. They're divided by the Mississippi River. And Minneapolis and St. Paul, the population of the metropolitan area is 4 million people almost, right? So not a overly big, but it's very spread out. So Minneapolis and St. Paul is 100 kilometers wide and 100 kilometers tall. And so even though there's a city of 4 million people, it's not very tight quarters like there is in other cities across the world. So we have a lot more room. We have, most people live in nice houses, and they have little yards with grass that they mow probably every week or two during the summer. But now the whole complexion, excuse me. Please tell me if I'm talking too fast or too slow. So want to make sure you guys understand. And but
A little bit fast.
I'm sorry?
A little bit fast.
A little bit fast, right? I will go slower, thank you. So Minneapolis and St. Paul have 4 million people in it, but there are 1 million immigrants and refugees. So it looks very different from what it looked like when I was growing up. But at the same time, it's still people that like the winter. It's still us. There's a lot of people being very friendly, but there's also a street they call Eat Street. And so there are restaurants from 50 different countries around the world on one street. So people like to drive up and down that Nicollet Mall and eat different types of ethnic food, different types of food from places all around the world. So Lynn, tell me what some of your favorite foods are that are not from your home country. Have you tried other things?
I love Monty.
What's that?
That is rice noodle and rice noodle salad.
Okay.
With chicken.
You like it spicy?
Yes, spicy.
Okay. Minnesotans don't like spicy. We eat very bland food. So if we eat spicy food, it makes us get big eyes, and it's very hot. But we still like to try it sometimes. My mute button went on. I'm sorry. Has anyone tried any foods from America, like junk food, like Twinkies, or different things like that, like chocolates or anything like that?
So I have cooked make my own brownies before.
Okay. Did you get a box and a mix? Or did you just make it from ingredients you bought at the store?
I just look at the recipe on Google and I just make it by myself. I have an oven at home.
Did it turn out well?
Yes.
Okay, good job. Good job.
I just put some little bit cream and make it like a little bear on top of it.
Okay, good job. So how about any of you, anyone else? Have you had hamburgers, hot dogs, pizza? Do you have those kinds of foods at all?
What is your signature food in Minnesota?
Minnesota, okay. Because there are people from Norway, traditionally they like to have what's called lutefisk. And lutefisk is codfish with, they put like this lime on it and let it just sit, and it almost cooks without the temperature, and then it's very fishy tasting. So, but it's that many Norwegians and Swedes have it during Christmas and holidays, so they really like having it then. Otherwise, Minnesota is pretty American. Hot dogs, hamburgers, pizza, those kinds of things, grilled chicken. Those are some things that most Minnesotans really like. And simple foods. Americans tend to be very busy. So they work, and when they come home, they don't want a complicated meal to make, because usually the mother and the father work and children go to school. So then you have to have a food that doesn't take too long to make. So that's why they tend to have more simple food during the week, and then more complicated meals on the weekends. So Panay, what foods do you like?
Yeah, I favorite food is mohinga.
Mohiga.
Yeah,
And what is that?
oh, sorry, a little bit English.
A little, I'm sorry. Oh,
It's,
okay.
it's our traditional food.
Traditional?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
traditional food. It's like
Okay.
our northern.
So do you guys eat a lot of noodles then in Myanmar?
Yeah.
Moringa is like a noodle with some hot soup.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we just eat it like that, or we just put some peas or like spicy
Okay.
sauce.
Okay. So we have different foods sometimes for different holidays. So most Minnesotans are either Christian or they go to church for the most part. And so we have a lot of, we have I don't know, you probably have seen on the internet and stuff, we have Christmas trees. And with Minnesota, we have a lot of snow. We have Christmas lights. And then we have foods like everyone has to, usually has a ham of some sort with potatoes for Christmas and things like that. And so we eat different foods for different holidays or different celebrations. And so during Easter, we tend to eat lamb, and then Thanksgiving is going to be next month. And so Thanksgiving, Abraham Lincoln started Thanksgiving as a national holiday. And so most Americans will eat turkey and then breaded stuffing, mashed potatoes. And then in Minnesota, there's a lot of Native American Indians up here. And so they harvest what's called wild rice. It's rice it's got a black outside, but then when you cook it, it opens up and it's white on the inside, and it tastes different than regular rice. And most Minnesotans like that as well.